My friends, hello. Trump meets Putin. It's the first time in a very long time that a Russian president has come to the United States. They are meeting at a military base in Alaska. And believe it or not, on the agenda is peace in Europe, and it's happening without Europe. There isn't a single European country represented. We're in a situation where the decisions are being made between adults. So they're going to talk among themselves, discuss, and then once it's over, once it's settled, they'll inform the Europeans about what has been decided for them. And this really is a real slap in the face that many observers have compared to those major conferences that took place during the Second World War. At Tehran in 1943, the United States, the USSR, and the United Kingdom were represented at the time. After that, there was the Yalta Conference. Same thing, we have the same participants. And a little later, we have the Potsdam Conference, which is the longest of all, the most important, because now it's August 1945, the World War has ended. It's a conference that will last, I think, about 2 weeks. So really, it's a long meeting where they will decide what to do with the Europeans. And they will find out through the media, like everyone else. You could say, you can always use the excuse of saying yes, but at the time, Europe was devastated by the World War under bombs, destruction, people were weakened, misery, hardship, famine, ration cards. We get it, it's true, we get it. But except today, we have no excuse. That means today we have decades of European construction, 80 years of building, of European reconstruction. And we see that Europe is exactly at the same point. Europe has suffered a decline that has reached such a level that its fate is decided without its help. Today we have Putin, who landed in Alaska. So the one who handles business while Putin is negotiating is Medvedev. So Medvedev is in Moscow. And he has his hand on the button, on the gong, as they say. If there's a problem, bam, he's able to react. For now, everything is going very well. The car, the equipment. So they preceded him on site with Ilyushins, a kind of air bridge. Many planes made the trip between the military base and Moscow. And then after that, it all culminated with Putin's arrival. The Russian journalists, on their part, complain a little. They say they were put up in very poor conditions. They were housed in a kind of large conference hall that was divided by partitions. And then they put in makeshift beds, military cots, and it's an extremely Spartan level of comfort. In addition, since they don't have it because of the sanctions, they don't have roaming. So actually, they have a lot of trouble communicating. But in any case, the meeting will take place behind closed doors between Putin and Trump. Last night, Zelensky was in London, and then an absolutely astonishing scene. We have the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who came out in front of number 10 on Downing Street, in front of number 10, which is actually closed off. You know, there was a time when people could get right up to the door. Now today, the whole street is blocked off with barriers and metal fences. And actually, what happened is that they came out and started hugging each other. That means that is really about show politics. We're in the politics of fragility, the politics of tears, the politics of emotion. So he started hugging him. And the images, even videos, were shared by the British Prime Minister. And he added some cheesy music on top of it. So literally like a 15-year-old teenage girl with a broken heart, writing poems and reading them with cheesy music in the background. He added one of those, and I mean, that's where we are. You understand now why today these countries aren't invited to this kind of decision-making. The United Kingdom, I mentioned Tehran, Yalta, Potsdam, etc. at the beginning of the video. They were there. Today, they're not even there. It's over. It's a country that's sinking into every level, as we say in English. It means they have no role left to play. Macron, same thing. Macron, he would have liked to go to Alaska. He would have liked to show off a bit, act familiar with everyone, appear in front of the journalists, say, yes, we, with our European partners, have taken a strong stance. We have threatened, we have banged our fists on the table. He wasn't given that opportunity. Why? Because Macron is playing clown politics. Macron doesn't do politics to negotiate between statesmen, right? Because he simply doesn't have what it takes to be a statesman. So he's not there to negotiate. He's just there to play the jackass. It means he's there to put on a show like that. Then the Elysee journalists captured the moment, and then it was shared on social media. That's all. He's at that level of childishness, actually. He's someone who didn't want to grow up. And actually, if you look at what's happening today, it would be unimaginable with presidents not even going as far back as de Gaulle, but even people like, at the time, people like Mitterrand at the time, people like, what are their names? Chirac, right? Or at the time when we had Helmut Kohl or Schröder in Germany and all that, it's not something that would have happened. We wouldn't have decided because Europe still had a voice, a strong voice, a diplomacy that was listened to around the world. Today, Europe is really sinking into backwardness. Europe, for your information, in all cutting-edge technologies, the technologies that make up the modern economy today, I'm talking about artificial intelligence, I'm talking about the cloud, I'm talking about new technologies, Europe is absent. There's no Europe in that. So we have a Europe that is busy lecturing the entire planet, giving lessons to the world, and then people look from afar and say, I don't listen to them, I don't listen to them. So what happens is that once the decisions are made by the people who matter, by Putin and Trump, and you should know that this war in Ukraine was originally started by the Biden administration. It's the Biden administration that used a very well-known provocation technique. The same technique, by the way, even if the story is a bit more complicated than it seems. Remember the time when Kennedy was in power? I think that, roughly speaking, don't quote me on this, we're roughly in 1963, I'm just saying, we're in 1963. We have the story of the Cuban Missile Crisis, where the USSR wanted to place missiles in Cuba and point them directly at Florida. And indeed, even though Cuba is an independent, free country and has the right to do what it wants or not, there are still geostrategic sensitivities. These sensitivities mean that you can't just go right up to the Russians. You can't go to their borders and say, well, now this is NATO. It was clear that this was going to start a war. And so once the Biden administration started it, the Europeans, because of their vassalage, didn't look out for their own interests. They didn't pay attention. For example, Germany didn't realize that once it was deprived of cheap Russian hydrocarbon energy, which is what really made the German miracle possible, because the German miracle is the combination of German know-how, German engineering, and cheap energy. So the cost of energy skyrocketed. They started using coal. They started bringing in energy through other means. They bought shale gas from across the American Atlantic, and it cost them 7 times more. And so at that point, Germany is going under. Other countries, well, not other countries, but European countries, experienced absolutely hellish inflation, mass unemployment, companies shutting down, skyrocketing taxes, and instability. We're discussing a third world war, but remember, Europe has already had 2. So when a third world war is mentioned, it's concerning. Who is concerned? It concerns investors, financial flows, and anyone seeking stability. As a result, people will seek refuge in the United States, Asia, or elsewhere. So Europe is literally being sacrificed because a senile American president at the end of his term just slapped them in the face. They went into a logic of self-immolation. Now, President Biden is gone. He's no longer part of the equation. He's not there anymore. Putin is coming. Trump is coming. Americans change administrations and presidents as often as they change shirts. And then every time, for example, look at what happened in Afghanistan, what happened in Israel, what happened elsewhere. I mean, they start things. Then another president comes in, he says, but why did they do that? And then he pulls out. And everyone who got involved in this story, he abandons them to their fate. So what Trump is doing today is a classic move in American politics. So he says to himself, this war in Ukraine, all that, I'm not interested, it's not my problem. He preferred to sign trade agreements with Russia, preferred to see American companies go and position themselves in the areas and markets that were abandoned by the Europeans, including the French, who took the hit, so the recession, who suffered unemployment, etc., out of servility to an administration that is no longer there today. Except that the servility, the European servility, or that of the European elites was pushed to such a limit, wasn't it? It is at a peak, so much so that they didn't realize the master has changed. That means that Biden is no longer president. It's over, finished. He's gone. He won't come back. So Biden is no longer president, and they're still there saying, yes, but Ukraine must join NATO. No, no, no. It's not France that decides about NATO. It's not Germany that decides about NATO. NATO at its core is an American organization. NATO is US made or made in USA. NATO is an American system. There isn't, the members of NATO are not equal. In fact, that's why de Gaulle, who was very, very much a sovereigntist, let's say, took France out of NATO, and then he even kicked NATO out of France. The headquarters of NATO was in France. He kicked it out. So why? Because the members of NATO are not all equal. You have the United States, they're the boss, and you have all the others who are in a position of vassalage, they obey. But today we have France, we have Germany, and so on, the coalition of the willing, countries that want to continue this war at all costs. Well, they say that Ukraine has to join NATO. No, sorry, whether Ukraine joins NATO or not, it's not up to you to decide. It's decided by the United States. The United States says, no, you shut your mouths, that's it. That's it, you have absolutely nothing to say about it. And that they don't want to understand. And actually, what's going to happen in the next few days is going to be very delicate moments. Why? Because I'll give you the options. Either the Americans and the Russians reach an agreement. That's one thing. That's very good. Because after all, what's the point of the game? The point of the game is still to stop the slaughter on the ground. There are days when 2,000 people die on the ground. And that's every day, each day. And the people who from afar encourage this war, they're not the ones on the ground getting hit by drones. All right? So this slaughter has to stop. That's the main thing, the most important. So the thing is, suppose the Russians and Americans come to an agreement. The problem is this coalition of fools, this so-called unwilling coalition. I'm talking about France, the United Kingdom, Germany. Are they going to accept? No, even if Ukraine agreed, they could still refuse. They could say no. Remember, this war could have ended back in 2022 in Ankara when the Russians and Ukrainians were about to sign an agreement. What did Boris Johnson do? Boris Johnson took a plane and left. He said, don't sign, we'll give you weapons, we'll give you money, whatever you want, just don't sign, please. Why? Because probably the British establishment needed this war, needed the continuation of this war. And honestly, I don't want to tell you, I don't want to say it, okay? I just have a side note that I excluded from this video, right, that you are watching. I'll just give you the title. The title is The Role of the United Kingdom and the British Elites in the Outbreak of the First and Second World Wars. That's what you call a rabbit hole. It's a deep burrow, a rabbit hole. If you go in that direction, you'll discover a lot of things. There you go, end of side note. So, I mean, they wanted, or they still want to start a third world war on European soil. You think, are they crazy or what? No, they're not crazy, because European capitalism regularly needs to do an economic reset. At some point, you have to destroy the means of production and then rebuild it and start a new economy, start with a new deal. And also, indeed, in terms of the budget, printing money, in terms of the law and everything, a war economy is great for the leaders because it allows them to have a field day. So that's the goal. And also the United Kingdom, well, since 2014, the British have been subjected to brainwashing every day based on Russophobia. A few weeks ago, I was on a ship between the United Kingdom and Norway. They go through the North Sea. It's a large, flat sea, not very deep, actually. The horizon was far from land, and the depth is 40 meters. That's not very deep. That's why there are so many oil drilling platforms. One evening, I was at a table chatting with some British families, just regular people, right? And actually, they told me, kind of in confidence, you know, at night, there are Russian submarines that come to observe us. I said, but how do they come to observe us? Where are they? Yes, they're there, they hide, they stick out a periscope, they take pictures of us, they watch us. I mean, we are really... The last time I heard about this kind of thing, it was from a fisherman. You know, fishermen tend to believe in things that are a bit supernatural. He's an Algerian, and he told me that they lived in a house that was located on the edge, right, of a cemetery, and that at night they would see things. Well, we're really close to that kind of mindset. I mean, why a civilian cruise ship? Are we really going to spend money, send a nuclear stealth submarine or whatever with 200 people on board just to come and take your picture? I mean, at some point you have to stop. But we're at a point where the media just keeps spinning things. Having lived in the UK for a long time, I can say the average Brit believes exactly what the media tells them. And I feel like the average French person, unfortunately, is also very close to this mental state. So, if you will, they need this war. This war is absolutely necessary. There are elites who have decided this. There you go. Well, they want to send their people to the slaughter. Then, if you come back, you're missing a leg, you're missing an eye, they give you a medal, a little flag, they applaud you, you're very happy, and that's it. I mean, you're going to trade a leg for a medal, aren't you? I'm telling you, keep your leg, keep your eyes, go buy the medal on eBay. They're for sale, no problem. You buy trinkets, because if you look at the soldiers, unfortunately, from many countries who have died or been wounded in many conflicts, what changes is just the trinket, you know? There's a yellow one, a green one, a blue one, stars, stuff like that. I mean, for 50 euros, you can buy a whole bunch and you stay alive. Unfortunately, that's how it is. The risk today is seeing the Europeans come and block peace efforts, come and tell us, because just yesterday they said, yes, we agree with peace, but what we want is more sanctions on Russia, Ukraine's integration into the EU, Ukraine's integration into NATO, the United Kingdom. We want to send soldiers on the ground. We want to distribute more weapons. Russia must return Donbass and Crimea. It must. So they have created conditions that are completely incompatible with any serious conversation to stop this conflict. And they do it on purpose because they know that by bringing up this kind of conversation, these kinds of things, it's something that won't go very far. The conversation won't go very far. And that's why, by the way, they haven't become credible partners. They're not credible partners because they prefer war over dialogue. So there you go, my friends. We'll see how things will turn out. We'll see how things will unfold in the coming days. Now, if this summit ends in failure, let's say the American side and the Russian side can't come to an agreement, which is still a possibility, although I doubt it, but it's a possibility. At that point, it would be an opportunity for Trump to say to the Europeans, you handle it yourselves, I'm leaving you. This isn't my war, I'm not interested. I'm here to do business, I'll take care of my tariffs, I'll take care of trade balances, problems with crime in Washington, all that. The rest is up to you. You created it, followed along, so handle it however you want. Which, in a way, suits him too, because you have to know one thing. A war in Europe, purely from an economic standpoint, I'm not talking about other aspects, purely economically, it would actually be very interesting for Mr. Trump. Why? Because a war, or even more instability than we have today in Europe, well, capital will flee Europe, investment flows will leave Europe. It's already fleeing, actually, but it's something that could accelerate even more. Where do you think they'll go? Well, they'll go to the United States. They'll find a safe haven in the United States. So there you go. And you know what the Trump doctrine is with all these tariffs and everything? What's the goal? It's to bring back investments, bring back job creation, bring back financial flows to his country. That's how he wants to support his economy. That's the goal. So in a way, if it gets mixed up with a dog's paw, like a witch I knew used to say, if it gets mixed up with a dog's paw in Europe, well, he wouldn't be completely against it. You see what I mean? Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But once again, this meeting or this summit without Europe's presence is really the summit that marks Europe's geostrategic decline. Europe is telling us that 80 years of so-called European project have served absolutely no purpose. And Europe today, because of the half-wits who lead it, because of people like Macron, people like Starmer, people like Merz, whom European populations continue, for reasons beyond understanding, to elect and put in charge. It seems like they say, let's choose the worst and put them in charge. Well, today, here is the result. Thank you, my friends, for watching this video. I want to remind you about the book, The Great Betrayals, which was released some time ago and explains how, by betraying Europe, we ended up where we are now. You can find it on Amazon. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.